Welcome to Powered by Authenticity. I'm so excited to have a live broadcast going tonight, especially with the guest that I have. I have been looking forward to this conversation ever since we had the opportunity to connect for the first time. Mary Messner, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This is going to be fun.
Awesome. How's it going tonight? How's everything going this week?
It has been a momming kind of week. Sick kiddo, chaos in the fall, in the winter. It just comes with the territory. But, those are the weeks that give you an opportunity to just kind of slow down a little bit and be present. Yeah. And so there's always a good.
Yeah, that's awesome. I hope everybody's feeling better.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We're getting there.
Well, how would you like to tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I will start with my very generic intro of, hi, my name's Mary Messner and I'm a keynote speaker. But every time I say that, I feel like that's wildly inadequate, because who of us can actually summarize ourselves up in, 2 words? So yes, I'm a keynote speaker. I deliver workshops. I am a mom to 2 little girls. I'm a wife, all the things that intersect personally and professionally. My biggest, I'll say, area of focus is really inspiring people to bring creativity into the workplace, which to me, that means just having the willingness to redefine concepts that may be thought of traditionally in one sense and pushing people to think about them in a slightly different way so that they can go on to achieve unexpected big goals and their dreams ultimately.
Oh, I love that. That's amazing. It's so great. I will also add that you're a daughter and you had some pretty incredible parents videoing you, I think, a couple weeks ago on LinkedIn.
I did. It was, if anybody here is listening and hasn't seen the video on LinkedIn, please go check it out. My parents, sweetest things ever, they offered to help me record some videos. And my dad, the behind the scenes for this one is that my dad, I'd had some notes on a computer and he was holding up my computer for me behind the camera, and he would slowly start tilting forward and he was bumping into the camera, and my mom was trying to hold him upright, and it was fun. They're great to have, their support and taking part in things. So fun afternoon.
That's awesome. So if you're not connected with Mary, go find her on LinkedIn, watch this video. I promise you will leave with a smile.
It was good. It was a good one for sure.
That is awesome. And the work that you do is it's so inspiring. I can't wait to talk about it a little bit more. I love, the work that you're doing out there, helping to support others, be their best and inspired for the best. It's great. And I can't wait to talk about that. However, before we do that, we like to do a little icebreaker here at the podcast, just to get to know our guests a little bit on a personal level. So it's the time of year that usually there's some sweets or some special recipes that we look forward to making. Do you have anything that you're looking forward to making or eating that you say for this time of year?
There was a time when, so if I ever host our family Christmas, which I've done the last few years and I'm doing again in a week, there was a time where I felt like I had to, have this perfect little family Christmas and everything being homemade. And I don't do that anymore. I'll use a phrase that my mom first taught me, which my mom, by the way, is an amazing cook. But I now, instead of saying I made this dinner, I say I made this dinner happen, which means I go to the store and I buy the things that I can put in the oven and not put a lot of effort into it. So I don't have a favorite recipe, but I will share a favorite tradition if we can start there.
Yeah.
So every year, this started when I was a child, and actually when my dad was a child, they would do this growing up as well. Christmas Eve dinner is all made. We make it happen. And then put it into little Tupperware containers and put it inside our stocking for Christmas. And then we have our stockings full of food. We eat our dinner in front of the fireplace, taking things out of the stockings. And then at the bottom of the stocking is a clue that takes you on a little adventure around the house to find your first Christmas present. And it's fun. As a kid, I remember doing it. And my husband, when he joined us and started doing it, he does legit clues. Like, you got to think about it. As a kid, it was just, go look under the bed or go look in the washing machine, and the clues would kind of take you on this path. But he does tricky clues. So that's kind of become a tradition for us that we're continuing with the kids. It's one of my favorite parts of the holidays.
That is so much fun. Oh my gosh, what a way to kick off the whole evening and next day. So that is so fun. I love that. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate that. Hey, producer Ken.
Hello.
How's it going tonight?
Going good.
What about you? Do you have a favorite food, recipe, something?
Oh, that I'm going to make? I'm not too sure. After doing Thanksgiving for everybody, I think I'm just going to take my hands off for a little bit here.
All right. Well, what's one recipe I should make?
I'm going to go with rum balls.
I knew it was going to say that.
Now tell me what those are.
Cookies.
So it's kind of like a cake pop, but it's got rum in it. So it's like a delicious chocolatey rum ball, and they're fantastic.
I'll send you my address after this, and you can mail some my way, and I'll let you know.
All right, you got it. And I'm all about whatever anybody wants me to make, so I'll go with rum balls.
All right, that's fair.
Well, thank you for letting us have a little fun there. Like I said, we'd love to get to know our guests a little bit on that personal level. What I'd love for you to share now is you've had such a journey in your career when you talk about your background and kind of going, I know you worked for Cerner and in healthcare for a long period of time, and then made this journey to keynote speaking. I'd love for you to just share what that journey looked like for you.
Yeah, no, happy to. So my background, like you said, is in healthcare, and I started as the director of health information management at Research Medical Center, which is a hospital in Kansas City where I live. And I was 25, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I was leading a team of like 80, and I think that was probably the first moment that I really understood this sort of lifelong mantra that I've had of just, I'll figure it out, because I really didn't know what I was doing. I sort of begged for this job, and I think it'd been open for a while and they couldn't fill it. And I showed up begging and pleading, and they thought, well, what the heck? She could maybe give this a shot. And so at a young age, I really learned to push myself to try new things, to experiment. I failed a lot. There were many moments I look back and say I wasn't a great leader. And I also feel like there were experiences there that had I had more experience, I wouldn't have gotten out of that moment what I took from it. So I started out in health information management, and then I did move from there into Cerner Corporation, which anybody that's in the healthcare space, massive healthcare IT company. It was acquired by Oracle Health back in 2021. And it was my home away from home for 14 years. And I loved my experience there. And I feel really lucky, honestly, to be able to say I was in a company that allowed me to grow and allowed me to explore, allowed me to take some risks. It was part of the culture there, was to focus on innovation, to constantly find ways to advance the healthcare environment for our clients. And I talked about research kind of setting me down that path of saying, I'm going to think about something really big, and I'm going to try some things out so I can learn from it. The biggest thing that I took away from my experience at Cerner was the importance of focusing on how everything you do has the power to make someone feel a certain way. The work can be very personal when you think about it in that capacity. And that could be the people that you're working with directly. It could be the clients that you serve. It's the nature of healthcare. Cerner's tagline forever was because it is personal. And that stayed with me the whole time I worked there, and it stays with me in what I'm doing now. In the midst of all of that, my kiddos were born. I stepped out of my executive role. I quit my job. They said, will you stay part-time? I thought, I can always quit again. Sure, I'll stay part-time. So I left the executive ranks and I became a part-time stay-at-home mom, part-time individual contributor. And probably the hardest job in the middle of all of that was being a stay-at-home mom. That was a whole different world that I didn't expect how challenging it would be, but I'm grateful that I had the experience. And then when I came back full-time, I worked with a team where I held the position of faculty on it was similar to a university program that taught members of the VA healthcare system, to these individuals to use data and analytics to impact veteran outcomes. And I stood in front of a room, in front of a training room, and I presented and I taught and I connected and I educated. And there was this group of us there that I'm still close with today, who they're still part of my team. They're my extended team when I need additional hands to help me on client projects. And we would critique the heck out of each other. So we would stand there and present, and we'd present to this empty room, except for the few of us that were scattered throughout. And people would say things like, work on your eye contact there, or, your T-Rex arms, these little ones right here are getting too strong. So, expand out, step in and step back. Every little tiny detail you think about when it comes to public speaking, we did our best to refine it and perfect it. And there was a gentleman on the team, and I'll share his name. His name's Mike Allison. And Mike, I will credit Mike with this to this day. I remember having a conversation with him out in the hall. We were standing at the top of the stairs, and he said, "You are one of the best I've seen. You have a career in this." And I was like, thanks. Moving on. But it stayed with me. It's those little whispers that you get from people, and it stayed with me. And I just started spinning on it. And my career was continuing to grow again with Cerner, and I had an opportunity to go back into the executive ranks. And this was through COVID that I was doing all of that. And this really great opportunity was dangled in front of me. And I knew that if I said yes, I would go back to working long hours and traveling consistently. And I knew that wasn't what I wanted for my family. And so Mike's words came back, and I thought maybe I could have a career in this. So that's when I left, and I left to go speak, not knowing what that meant. And here we are 3 years later, and I still feel like I'm figuring it out. I think everybody is constantly figuring out kind of that thing they're doing on their own. But that was kind of the catalyst that got me to where I am today.
That's amazing. And it's funny that you say that. There is no bachelor's degree in public speaking. There is no, it's not, when I was in high school, there was no career known as, go be a keynote speaker, go deliver, content. So just the way that you can develop that, and what I love about that is you found something that you love, and you went and you're molding it into what you want it to be. And I think that's something that a lot of us, aspire to, is job descriptions aren't the same anymore. I'm going to go make my own, and I'm going to go find what brings me joy and go try to do it.
Yeah. And I think the other part I'll add in there is giving yourself permission to constantly evolve. So what I was doing the first year, over the second year, third year, and now as I'm planning for year 4, I have my core themes of speaking about creativity in the workplace, but how I show up through that message and how I bring my clients in through that message, that's always changing and evolving as I learn and I play with different tactics. And my ultimate goal is to make sure that I am reaching an audience in the places where they are able to listen. And so that means I have to always be willing to shift and adjust my style and learn, quite honestly, along the way. But that does make it fun too.
Yeah, and that's important. I mean, there's no cookie cutter way to do any one thing, because you're always going to different people. So that core message can be the same, but the new ways that you share it are exciting to go find. So interesting. Yeah. And I have to say, it's funny. I remember one of the first kind of speaking things I did was in pharmaceutical. And we used to have to go through this train the trainer program. And I remember the first one that I went through and standing up there and just being picked, every little thing, just, let's make all of these things just perfect. So I flashed back when you were talking about standing in front of a bunch of people. Yeah, but you learn so much. There's so much growth in that.
You do. And then I think you get to take the opportunity as a speaker to say, which parts of this feedback do I absolutely want to pull in? And which parts do I say, you know what, I am going to go against the perfect recommendation, because for me, it allows me to connect with the audience. And I'll give you a couple examples. So there is a pace at which you should always be speaking and I do not remember what the pace is because I've gone away from using that advice, but there's a pace that you speak at where if you go too slow or too fast, the audience can't understand the message you're trying to deliver. And I absolutely agree with that. And also, you look at someone like Simon Sinek, who has been wildly popular in public speaking. Simon Sinek actually speaks way faster than the recommendation, but he creates an energy in the way that he delivers it. People that I have coached that have said, I want to be able to speak effectively, but they can't control the pacing from one side of the room to the other. The perfect keynote message is do not stand behind a podium. Well, my response is your pacing is going to distract from your message. So at the end of the day, the most important part is creating connection with the audience. So if you have to put your hand on a podium to help anchor you, that is less of a distraction than you pacing back and forth. So do that until you get yourself comfortable. So I love all of the rules and recommendations, and I think they're great to study and to practice. And you also have to figure out ways to have a style that allows you to connect with an audience in the best way possible.
Yep. You have to stay authentic and true to yourself at the same time, delivering and bringing people in. Yep.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm sure during this transition, there's really probably been some challenges that you've experienced. Feel free to share one if you'd like, or if not, just how do you handle these challenges that come up, whether it's transitioning through the career sector, like, you've successfully done, or just other bumps that get in front of us. What's advice? What are different ways that you handle those kind of challenges that have come up that you've experienced?
Yeah, well, I'll answer it in a couple different ways. So one perfect example, and this goes to anybody out there that's maybe considering kind of starting their own thing. The number of sleepless nights I had in the beginning of the name of my company. So my company is named Highline Creative Group, and that's my LLC name. And I named it that way with intention because in my view, everybody's on a high line, personal, professional. They're moving from point A to point B. And the best way to traverse the high line is to bring in a little bit of creativity so that you're able to do it in a way that's effective for you. And then I threw group in there because I was speaking to the universe that I was going to grow and do something big. And then I would introduce myself as Highline Creative Group, and people would say, you're an ad agency, you're a marketing firm, you're a graphic design firm. The word creative immediately took people to one specific type of company. And I explored, do I rename it? Do I change it? Do I, what's the best way for me to do it? And I solved it by not changing my company name, by being more intentional about talking about creativity in a way that expands the definition beyond something that's related to, to the arts or like a tangible product. And I focused on growing my personal brand in the process. So when you see me on social media, yes, Highline Creative Group is listed there as my company, but all of my branding is showing up as me, Mary Messner. And what that feels like it's given me permission to do, and I'll use the words that you used, is still feel like no matter the direction I go in, that I am remaining authentic to me and who I am. Because at the end of the day, as a speaker, people are hiring me. They're not hiring insert name LLC. They're hiring the person that is speaking. And so that's been a very freeing thing for me to go from sleepless nights of saying, I really screwed this thing up by just naming my company the wrong thing, to, wait a minute, that doesn't define me and who I am. And I still love the name of the company, so I don't want to change it. But I get to choose how I show up, not a name that doesn't mean anything to anyone else but me. And the other thing I'll share is those are the kind of things that inform exactly what I speak about. So I talk about a model on creativity in the workplace that's called Dream, Feel, Create. And the dream there is, what is the thing that you want to go do? What's that big, bold dream that you have that you don't know how to get to? So naming that first. And the second piece is, what do you want people to feel? What do you want to feel on your own? And those are the guiding things that should allow you to create what you want to create. So when I think about the company name, at the end of the day, the name itself has nothing to do with the dream that I have associated with my work or the feelings that I want to inspire in everyone else and in myself. And once I put, I put what I speak about into action, I feel like it freed me up to go lean into what I actually do want to go do and not get distracted by things like a company name.
Yeah. I love that. And I think it just allows you to yourself, you're true to who you are. When people see you, when they come forward to ask for your help, they're getting married, and they know that it's not a group or a name. It's actually you, the person. And you do a great job, first of all, on social platforms, branding yourself. And I love the way that you do that. So, it's engaging as well. And you kind of, like I said, even just the video with your parents, it draws you in. And if I bring Mary in to speak, I get a sense of what that's going to look like. So, first of all, hats off to you, because all the social's not easy.
But, I still don't know what I'm doing, but I try.
None of us do.
I talk about creativity. It is a bit of a creative expression for me to go and play around and see what I have fun with and what sticks. And I'm still figuring that part out every day. It's kind of just a little experimentation, but it's a fun experimentation for sure.
Yeah, and I think it brings forward joy, right? And so and when people are happy, they're more productive, more creative. So I think it all blends together. So it's so interesting how much just that name and having to settle and then getting to the other side with the person. That's a very good example of not getting yourself so tied up in some of these things and thinking creatively of how to use what you've got, but use it to your advantage, so a very, very good example. Yeah.
And I'll say a similar thing for a lot of people that are, as they're starting a company and they immediately say, well, I have to have the logo and the website. And I'm sure every business book would say, yeah, you need all of that. And also when you've got things like social media, there are spaces to simply go out and play with your brand a little bit and just kind of explore, because there is no way to wake up one morning and go, oh, I know exactly what it's all going to look like. And anybody who says they do, maybe somebody's done that and it's turned out perfectly, but usually it requires a little bit of experimentation. So giving yourself that permission to go out there and try something and adjust and to change and to play, doing all of that before you feel like you have to tie yourself down to the perfect logo or this perfectly curated website. All that can come once you feel like you know that feeling that you're trying to create in everyone that interacts with you.
Yep. And I think it's okay too to realize that once you have it, you can change. You know, where the direction is in 2024, when we look into 25, maybe you feel the need to change. You know, I was one of those. I was like, if I'm going to have a podcast, I need to have some sort of logo. And I just, came up with something, and it was a thorn in my side for about a year. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to change it. At the time I was like, it's fine. It's something, but not only has the logo changed, but the theme of the show, everything evolves. And I think that's what you want. You want to get to know your people, like your audience and who you're interacting with. Yeah.
Yes. Hi, Ray. I just saw Ray's comment pop up in there.
Oh, yay. Awesome. All right. So another question for you, because I know for myself, when I look at new direction, I think, who's doing it in the field, and can I go ask questions? So even if it's not an official coach, having that just, a door open. So maybe could you share if coaches have played a role in your career? Have you leveraged, those types of relationships to help you grow?
I've always had a coach, but I've had different coaches every single time. So when I first was considering quitting my, executive job, I hired a coach. She was an Enneagram coach, which was interesting. I hadn't done Enneagram before, and she walked me through the process, because I didn't want to be running away from something. I wanted to be making a decision that was not emotional, but was educated, smart, appropriate. So I hired a coach to kind of help me work through that process. That was one of the first ones that I had. I hired a coach. Her name is, that was a woman named Jana Thomason. And then I hired a woman named Gigi Allen. I actually knew her from high school, and if you're listening, hi Gigi. She is a partner, is how she presents herself more than anything. She has a whole bunch of different things. When I hired her at the time, she focused a lot on doing some kind of internal self-work to figure out what that signature offering is that you are meant to bring out into the world. So it was a wild, I like the woo-woo. I don't live in the woo-woo on a day-to-day basis. And so she took me on a whole journey, and I did so much self-reflection. And I remember my husband, I would sit outside every morning and I would do a little bit of meditation, and my husband was like, "You okay? What is happening? Trust the process. I'm getting through all of this." But it was fascinating, and it allowed me, that was a huge part for me, getting really clear on my message of creativity and how important that is, and that is what I want to bring forward. So I had her help me throughout that piece. I had an individual named Chris Wood, who I worked with, who is a business coach. So that was kind of the next turn of, all right, I feel really clear about my message. I need to understand the ins and outs of business. And so Chris and I worked together, and we talked a lot about marketing and the business components. I've had a speaker coach that I hired. He was wonderful to work with. I had I'm currently working with she does a lot of LinkedIn strategy type of work, but she's really more along the lines of kind of business and marketing type of coaching. And Jacob Brown was the speaker coach that I hired. Christine Rowe, R-O-W-E, is who I'm working with now. I'll share all their names because I would recommend all of them to anyone. Each of these engagements have been 3 to 6 months. So they've been short, but they've served really important purposes. And I honestly don't know that there won't be a time that I don't have a coach based on what I need in that moment.
Yes.
And I think the informal part of it is huge too. I do have people that I text questions to, and I say, how'd you market yourself here? Or can you give me feedback on this? I have a huge group of people that I'm always reaching out to, because that feedback, it's what got me to where I am now. And there is no way that I would ever want to turn that off. I think that's so important for everyone that's trying to grow and develop.
Yep.
So, long answer to your question. Yes, I've used coaches. And yes, I think it's a huge part of any business venture.
I think that's awesome. Just a quick question. How did you find all of your coaches?
Let's see. I knew a couple of them personally from Gigi I went to high school with. That was, one example. Some other ones were referrals. Jacob Brown was someone who I'd followed on LinkedIn, and I just really liked how he presented himself and reached out and said, hey, can I just get to know you? I do think a big part of that, referrals have been huge, but I think a big part is just feeling like you respect the work that the person does and that you feel like you connect to what they're doing. I mean, you're not a match with every coach. And that's okay. That's not anything against you or anything against the coach. That has to be a cohesive relationship. So a lot of taking the time just to get to know somebody and then saying, does it make sense to work together?
And I think that's important, because there are a lot of coaches in many different areas. There's a lot of business coaches, a lot of speaking coaches, financial, and it's finding, I encourage, just drop somebody a note and say, do you have 15 minutes? Really get to know, try to really get to know that person before there's that longer term commitment, because so many different personalities and so many different ways to approach the topics that finding that right fit is just so important, because there are a lot of coaches available, which is a great thing. I think back to some of my younger days where somebody said, we're going to get you a coach. It was like, oh, why am I failing? And it's not. It's the exact opposite. It's such an opportunity for growth.
Yes. It's an investment. If a company says, I want to get you a coach, that is a compliment. And it's an investment that either you make in yourself or a company makes in you. Yeah, I'm all for it.
Yes, absolutely. Awesome. I agree. I have a slew of people who I like to have for support too. I just think it's so important for growth. The other thing I know specifically for me in 24, I've spent a lot of time doing is networking and getting to know people. How about networking? What's your viewpoint on that, and the importance that it played for you as you start out on this journey of being a keynote speaker?
Yeah, it is the only reason I've been able to have any success in this business, is 100% because of my network. And I will say that I have a little bit of an advantage in the Kansas City community, because I worked for one of the largest employers who, after being acquired, it was a little, I'll say it this way. This company hired the most brilliant people. And as things have changed, those brilliant people are now scattered across companies across this city and beyond. So I did have a little bit of a built-in network that is now in a whole bunch of companies, which is awesome. And when I first left my executive role, corporate America, I got onto LinkedIn, and I didn't really know what I was doing. And I started sending messages to people and just said, hey, can I buy you a cup of coffee? I'm trying to figure this whole thing out. I really like what you did here. Can I get to know you? And everyone said yes. I mean, there might have been a few people that I didn't hear back from, but that was not the norm. Everybody said yes. And so my husband would joke that I was going to spend any revenue that I made or any money that I made in my first year of business on coffee, because I was out constantly. There's a woman here in Kansas City named Alana Mueller, and she wrote a book called Coffee, Lunch, Coffee. And and she now does speaking engagements all about that. When she went out on her own, she would have a coffee and a lunch and a coffee. And that was an intentional way to build her network. And that's advice that has certainly stuck with me. And I think it's something that I still do today. So Ray Rucker, if Ray is still over here in the chat.
Yeah.
I got a message from Ray. This is when I was doing some fundraising work for the American Heart Association. And Ray sent a message, and he said, I'll send, Ray, I'm going to try and quote you on this, so I hope I don't embarrass you, but you're not easily embarrassed. He said something like, hey, I'll throw in $500 if you let me take you to lunch. And I was like, what is this? What kind of an email is that? And ultimately what he did is he pulled a couple of us together that kind of knew each other from the periphery. Yes, he made a donation to American Heart Association, but he started that by just saying, hey, can we get lunch? And since then, I consider Ray hi, Christine. I consider Ray a great business resource. I consider him a friend. And it all started with a LinkedIn message saying, can we get lunch?
I love that.
And it doesn't take a lot to do that. Yeah. And so for me, networking, going back to the original question, it has been everything for my business, and it has helped me feel like I have a sense of community as someone who's kind of doing this out on my own.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. And I love also how you said, everybody said yes. Because I think, it's so scary. You send somebody a message like, I just want to get to know you. And you're like, how are they going to respond? Yeah. Okay, the worst is they might say no, but most people just want to help others. So they might just say yes.
Yeah. And I think too, I still do that a lot. I do a lot more over Zoom now than I did at the time. And it's a really easy way. I think you and I first had our first conversation over Zoom, and it was just, hey, can we talk and get to know each other? And here we are.
Yeah. It's so powerful. The one thing I'll add is I have a 19-year-old daughter, and I keep trying to teach her the beauty of networking, the beauty of just going to say hello. I think it's a skill set that, we're not teaching to our kids in college, and, even high school would be great. And I just, I would love to see this become a skill set that we teach our younger, kids as they're coming up into the working world, because it does become so important. To your point, you hired a coach that you knew in high school, out of relationships and keeping in touch and just keeping that journey. So I don't know, maybe you have a different perspective. I just feel like it's such an important part of going into the working sector, no matter what you do, that I'd love to see some time spent on that for high schoolers and those entering into college.
Well, and I think, here's the message that I would say to a younger audience as well, is there's a couple things that I think hold people back from these types of conversations. And the first one is a fear that you're going to do it the wrong way. And I'll give you a good example. I am in college. My cousin, I think this was how it happened, 20-some years ago. I'm going to say it was my cousin, introduced me to an executive at a company that she knew. And so I was a few years away from graduating, trying to figure out what's next. And he agreed to sit down for lunch. And I remember walking into this lunch meeting, networking meeting, and it was a 4-top. And I panicked because I didn't know where to sit. Do I sit across from him? It was a big table. That would have felt awkward. Do I simply sit next to him? I felt like I needed to know how to do it. But I mean, I was 19, I was 20. Why would I know how to handle that? And I think there is no right way, quite honestly. And so giving yourself permission to be able to say, this feels really awkward. Where should I sit? I'm just going to sit here right next to you. That's okay. And to call out the awkwardness and to say, I don't network very often and I'm uncomfortable and this feels weird. I think until you get over that hump, you assume there is a right way to always do it. But really, when you're networking with somebody, acknowledging the awkwardness of it and kind of making fun of yourself in the process, there's a lot of freedom that comes in that. So I think outside of just saying, hey, youth, go network, it's an acknowledgement of saying, one of the best things you can do when you're networking is show up as yourself. Flaws and unknowns and confusion and all. And maybe that's the starting point for the conversation.
I love that. You know, listen, if as much as you can be true to yourself. So if that's truly just saying, I feel a little, you know, not quite sure where to sit, and, you know, make kind of a little silly moment out of it. And Christine added here in the comments, going out to coffee shops is great to be able to check them out. So that's great. And then she's used LinkedIn for years to network, and each week she asks people to virtual coffee and have yet to receive a no. So it really is, it's great. That is amazing to see and to hear. And it's just, you know, LinkedIn is such a great tool that we have available to us now that, you know, if there's somebody doing something, just reach out and say hello, and you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. All right. So thinking about that and thinking about people that you may want to reach out to on LinkedIn, you know, if you're thinking about starting a career change or want to start something new, you know, a new journey, maybe even a little side hustle to try to figure out if that's really where your heart belongs from a career perspective, any advice that you would give those individuals?
I would say, so 2 things, maybe 3 things as I'm thinking through this. The first one is, don't start expecting that you're going to be perfect. And that seems like very generic advice, but I'll explain it in a couple ways. I think the first one is, when you start something new, and I'll use the speaking example, I was good at speaking and I know I can always be better. And when I started, that was a huge part of it, is if I stand up in front of a room of people, am I good at it to where it could be a career, but also how do I feel about it? Did this give me energy? Did this deplete my energy? I have spoken in front of certain audiences and I've walked away from that and I've said, that felt awful. And I've had to kind of peel that back and say, is it because I'm doing something that I'm not supposed to do? Or is it because that audience that I was in front of, they're not my ideal client? And so I think part of that is getting out there and having the willingness to experiment, and then focusing not just on one interaction and letting that guide the rest of your decisions of whether you move forward or not, but focusing on that interaction, assessing how it made you feel, focusing on why it made you feel like that, where you felt like you excelled, where you felt like you had opportunity to grow and develop. That path is not linear. That path is going to take you to the left, take you to the right, and take you forward and take you backward. Yeah. But you only know the answer to that if you have the ability to go out and simply start, and then be open to allowing it to flow from there. That was one of the things I was going to say. And I don't remember the 2 other things I was going to say now as I'm talking through all of it. I know. Okay. You mentioned LinkedIn. I love the idea of watching people on LinkedIn that are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years ahead of where you are on that journey. Just seeing how they show up, seeing how they present themselves, and then ask them about it. Hey, tell me how this felt. How did you start? What did you do? What was the first step you took? Most of those individuals had someone that was doing the same thing for them when they were first starting. And so there is usually a natural desire to be able to answer those questions. I'll also say sometimes what people are putting out there on LinkedIn, I mean, it's the same message that we tell all of our kids. What you see online is not always reality.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
being able to ask the questions and kind of peel back the covers a little bit will give you a lot more insight into the truth of the business journey, as opposed to, you know, the perfectly cleaned house and the balloons over here from a birthday party that I'm hiding with my chair. You know, there's always something that happens behind the scenes. And so observe and learn and ask to learn more. There was a third. I don't remember the third thing. So we're gonna leave with those two as the advice.
No, I love that. You know, and you're so right. You know, it's one thing to see somebody online and it look like it's this seamless thing that's happening, but you know, getting that time one-on-one with them to be able to ask the questions and get that, you know, response in a way that you're like, okay, it's not perfect for them either. Okay, I hear some of the things that are happening, some of the, you know, sideways curves that life had in, you know, paths that it takes. And, you know, I'll even say with the podcast, you know, sometimes you see people who you think, wow, that'd be a really awesome guest, or I would like to be a guest on that. And then you get to spend a few minutes with them and you realize that probably isn't going to be the best fit. And what we're seeing online is not necessarily what's going to come across in a recording. So, you know, just the one-on-one time, I think it's so valuable as you're looking at that pivot.
Yeah. And that ties right back into the networking thing. Go make the ask.
Absolutely.
And I love that Christine mentions that people they generally don't say no. And if they do say no, they're not the kind of person that you're going to learn from anyway.
100%.
And that no is actually it just saved you some time. So it's a win-win. Is how I'll spin that one. Yeah.
We've all gotten on calls and you're like, ooh, 30 minutes. I'm not gonna get you realize it. They do the work for you.
Yes, exactly. Very true. Oh, too funny.
I love that. Great advice. And, you know, question for you, what's next? What's on the horizon? Anything fun coming up that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, so this has been interesting for me. I'll tell my personal story behind this as well. So, my husband and I have always had, one of us has always traveled in our career. Minus the COVID period. And so we've always had this kind of ebb and flow based on what's happening in each person's career. And as a keynote speaker, if I'm going to go all in on that, I do have to have a willingness to travel and get on the road. And I love to travel. And he is in a career that also requires him to travel. So it's creating, I guess there's a way to look at it by saying it's creating a limitation on how often I can get out of Kansas City to do speaking engagements. But because of how I like to think through things with a little bit of creativity, there's a book called Beautiful Constraints. And I see this kind of as a beautiful constraint. So I have 2 young children. I want to be present for them. I want them, no, I don't drop everything every single time they call, because I do want them to see their parents as creating a balance of achieving things personally while respecting the professional. But I do want to be present as often as I can. So I'm constantly evaluating what that means for me as a business. And one of the things that I am doing this year, or leaning into 2025, is taking my keynote, this dream, feel, create framework, and taking it from the big stage into smaller interactions. So turning it into a workshop that allows me not just to be more flexible in where I spend my time, but reach more individuals who can benefit from that message, even when a company isn't having a big conference where they want to get somebody on stage. And I'll call out Christine here, because Christine is She's actually an individual that I've brought on board to help me with this process. Christine has a huge background in adult learning, educational principles, and she studies the neuroscience components of how the brain learns and how it thinks and how it adapts. And she's become a member of my team working on transitioning this into a workshop. So we're launching it. She and I are doing that together, which is really cool. But I'm excited in 2025 to lean back into my Kansas City network and to bring this into businesses with a framework that can actively be applied to a current business challenge or business dream that they're working on, and have it be a framework that can sustain them long term. So I'm really excited about this in 2025. I'm looking forward to seeing where all of it goes, and reaching out to my network to support me in that process. Back to where this whole conversation started.
Yeah, right. I love that. And I love how you're expanding the accessibility of really important content for organizations. You know, to your point, not everybody has the larger conferences, and, you know, being able to present the content in that workshop, I think, is just so valuable. There's so many organizations that are going to benefit from your message. And I love the fact that you're bringing it in and going to be able to reach so many more people. I think, you know, creativity is something that we often forget that we have the ability to use day to day in our corporate lives. Yeah. And I love the fact that you go and teach and have everybody embrace it.
Yeah, well, and I'll add on there too, is the center of that Dream Feel Create model is that focusing on the emotions we want to create. So, and I always say it's the emotions you want to create in others and the ones that you want to feel for yourself. And so when I think about me, I want to feel like I am in a business environment that allows me to create the balance that I seek. Now, when I think about my clients, I want them to feel like a really important, meaningful conversation is accessible to them and they can partake in it. So this is a perfect example of using that framework and leaning into it in my own business and creating, I always say, create the unexpected. I didn't see this as what I was going to be doing next. And yet when I follow that framework, it seems so obvious that this is what I should be really leaning into in the upcoming year. And I agree, Christine, it's going to be an exciting 2025.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, that is great. How exciting. I'm so happy for you. And it sounds like things are gearing up, and I love your focus. So congratulations on that. That's amazing and exciting. And I also just want to say thank you for being on the podcast tonight.
This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it. When you and I first met, you were not on camera. I think you were traveling or something. And so
I was, yeah.
And I was like, oh, I really like your voice. It's a great voice. I can see why you're good at podcasts. And now I get to see your smiling face along with it. So thank you. This was a fun way to spend the evening.
Well, thanks again for being here. Producer Ken, thanks for helping us out tonight.
You got it.
I appreciate it. I'd also like to give a shout out to Go Art here in Batavia, New York. I get to see a little bit of the studio behind us, but it's a great community center. They, through the use of a grant, have gifted me the use of the podcasting studio, and the community that just surrounds us is amazing. Mary, it sounds like you have something similar in Kansas City, and this is a wonderful thing when that happens. So again, kudos to Go Art, and thank you again so much for being here. I loved this conversation. I love the actionable tools and advice. It was just wonderful. So thank you, Mary, for being here.
You got it. It was fun.
All right. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too.